What do you think of when you hear the word risk? I think of being on a stage, talking in front of dozens of people, like I'm doing now. My parents think of unsafe driving or getting into fights at school. People tend to associate risks with negative stuff quite immediately. And you yourself might have just done that. Whether they are positive and can bring joy in your life, or negative and ruin it, risks are everywhere. And people my age are extremely prone to taking them. It's a fact proven for decades. Yale School of Medicine conducted a study which showed that injury rates among teenagers are 200 times higher than any other age category. So why do teenagers take so many risks? Socrates once commented upon teenagers saying, "They show disrespect for elders, they have contempt for authority, they show zero manners, and love chatter in place of exercise." I mean, he might have been a great philosopher, but that statement can't be true, right? For as long as teenagers have existed, there were adults out there to judge and criticize them. But everybody on this planet was a teenager at some point. Marilyn Monroe, Abraham Lincoln, Queen Elizabeth, you, the adult in the public. And all these people took most risks between the age of 13 and 25. Why this specific age? It isn't just a question for caregivers or the youth itself. It's a subject with high political stake, debated all over the world. When do we decide somebody is cautious enough to be treated like an adult? How much responsibility do we allow teenagers? These are just some of the many questions we will be answering today. Ladies and gentlemen, let us understand the teenage brain and its tendency for risks. Our brain is made of neurons, which are gray. As we grow up, these neurons get wrapped in a white thing called myelin. Myelin is this amazing thing that makes our brain work 3,000 times more efficient and fast. It's like upgrading your brain to optic fiber internet. This process starts from the back of your brain and it moves forward throughout your life. By the time we are teenagers, it already has traveled a pretty long way, but not long enough yet. This remaining gray area is called your prefrontal cortex. It controls decision-making, rational thinking. It is basically your brain's responsibility center. Some people call it the thing that makes humans humans. However, this area isn't fully developed until we hit the age of 25. So, neurologically speaking, we cannot consider people mature adults until 25, certainly not 18. Because this area communicates more slowly with the rest of your brain, other parts kick in and start making decisions. For teenagers, it's our amygdala. The amygdala is a small sphere placed somewhere around here inside your brain. How many of you have watched Inside Out? Yeah, quite a lot. Joy, sadness, disgust. They're these cute little characters that live in Riley's head. They control her emotions, her decision-making, the way she responds to the outside environment. Well, that's exactly your amygdala. It is our brain's emotional center. In teenagers, it is extremely active, and it controls most of their decisions. Meaning that teenagers put more emotion than cautiousness into their process of taking decisions. So that is the reason teenagers are so reckless, right? Wrong. In order to understand this, let's take a look at a study done by Temple psychologists Jane and Steinberg. They gathered a group of teenagers and a group of adults. Both had to play a driving simulating game. The faster you reached the end line, the more points you had. However, if you oversped, if you took bad turns, you would lose points. And the results show that both adults and teenagers took pretty much the same amount of risks. So, where was the teenager's missing prefrontal cortex now? It didn't make him a reckless driver. But the study didn't stop here. It brought in a new factor. Your peers would be watching you. Your friends would have their eyes upon you. And the results were fascinating. While adults took pretty much the same amount of risks as before, teenagers skyrocketed their risk level. It is the eyes of our peers that limit our judgment. Let's go back to our brain to understand this. Near our amygdala, we have this other sphere called the striatum. Whenever you do something which gives you pleasure, like receiving money, eating sugar, getting a hug, the striatum goes up and it releases a chemical called dopamine. Dopamine is the hormone responsible for making us feel pleasure. The University of California shows that dopamine levels are the highest during teenagers' years. So, adolescents are the most driven people out there to get that spike of dopamine. And do you know where teenagers get most dopamine from? Their friends, their peers. That is the case for me also. Last winter, I went in a ski camp. I arrived 2 days later because I had to catch a flight from Singapore to Romania. Anyways, when I arrived, I could already see the formation of two distinct friend groups. Let's call them Group A and Group B. At the beginning, I was socializing and being friendly with both groups. But I was slowly getting closer to Group B. And then it hit me. I saw how Group B kept being mean and hateful towards the girls in Group A. And for some kind of reason, I also started acting like them, being hateful and mean towards some girls which did me no wrong. This summer, I had the opportunity to meet them again alone. This time, we actually managed to get along. I even became friends with some of them. I always thought of myself as a person who isn't easily influenced by others. But that experience proved me wrong. I let myself be a terrible person in order to integrate in some random group of friends, which I don't even keep in touch with anymore. But why are we teenagers so obsessed with validation from our friends? From the moment we are born, we develop a sense of self. Our appearance, our gender, the people surrounding us. When we enter adolescence, a new layer comes in. I like to call them imaginary monsters. When we are little, we have imaginary friends that help us navigate and understand the world. When we enter adolescence, these friends turn into judgmental, mean monsters that criticize all our movements. When I'm around people my age, I have this storm of doubts about myself. How can I be better? How can I fit more? If I talk like them, will they like me more? If I dress that certain way, will they think I'm cooler? I just want to fit in. All teenagers just want to fit in. We behave in ways we wouldn't alone in order to please our peers. We are willing to pay high prices for the price of integration. And of course, some of those risks we take can have detrimental impact upon us. The world faces us with so many dangers every single day. Overspeeding, violence, substance usage, smoking, you call it. Already, we are less likely to consider all future consequences, especially if we're around people our age. That's why adults, caregivers, parents need to act as the prefrontal cortex we are missing and help us navigate and take wise decisions. I know until now everything I said about risk might sound a bit scary. Risk, this terrible thing that just ruined the youth. But risk can be an amazing characteristic of the teenage brain. Look at me. I am a 15-year-old girl who stepped on the stage and accepted the risk of failure, of embarrassment, in order to present you valuable information. History has proven over and over again that risk-taking in teenagers has led to amazing outcomes. Look at Greta Thunberg, leading a generation of young people to fight climate change. She herself said, "We are not brainless or reckless. We are just eager and excited to change and discover the world." Little Rock Nine, a group of young people risking their life in order to fight segregation and racism back in 1950s. There are three main things I want to leave you with from this presentation. 1. The teenage brain is neurologically developed to take risks. 2. The biggest factor behind this is peer pressure and peer validation. 3. While most people associate risk with negatives, they can have an amazing outcome upon teenagers and the entire world. From Little Rock 9 in American South to the wall that once cut through Berlin to Tiananmen Square in Beijing, teenagers risk their life to fight inequality at times when nobody else would. And I think that deserves a round of applause. Our courage, their courage, allowed the world to see amazing new ideas. So I encourage all of you out there, teenagers, adults, to go into the world and take calculated and cautious risks. Who knows? You might just change your life or somebody else's. Before leaving, I would like to share a small conversation that I had with my uncle. While preparing this speech, he asked me, "But Andrea, what if you step on that stage and forget all of your ideas? What if you mumble? What if you fail from the beginning and don't even get chosen as a speaker?" And I looked him in the eyes, and with a big smile on my face, I told him, "Well, uncle, I am willing to take that risk, and here am I taking it." Thank you.